1. So, for some context, the property I work at just got bought, and with new owners means an inspection. The new owners have been having things fixed and have been very thorough in making the changes we've needed. This includes fixing the parking lot and making sure our pool is running at 100%. Well, they just finished resealing the parking lot today, but 30 minutes into my shift, it was still being worked on, and the maintenance worker was coming back a few hours into my shift to check the chemical levels in the pool. My first elderly asshole that came in at 3:24 this afternoon was complaining as he was walking in the door. He was upset that he hadn't been notified about the work on the parking lot being done, and he drove through the caution tape and over one of the cones that blocked off the section being worked on. He threw his reservation confirming papers at me, telling me reservations had told him over the phone that I could give him his discount rates and an additional $20 off because a small section of our parking lot was taped off, and our pool was closed when he arrived. I pull up his reservation, and he's booked through a third party. I tell him I'm not allowed to make changes to third-party reservations without approval from the third party and my manager, and inform him that the rate he was given was already 30 less than the senior discount. He then calls me stupid because he doesn't use the internet and never made his reservation through a third party. I apologized and said it clearly states that it is a third-party reservation. He then says that he looked up our hotel on his computer and used the first phone number he saw, which, seeing as how it said third-party brand on his reservation, he called and made his reservation with a third party. But no, he didn't make it through a third party. I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm a moron. I tell him again that before I make any changes I have to receive approval. So I let him know that I'm going to call my manager to see if there's anything that I can do to resolve this situation for him. She doesn't answer the call, but sends me a text saying she'll call me back. So at this point I'm starting to shake from anxiety. But when I go back to the desk to talk to him, he's calling me names again, and for some reason asks my age. He's now telling me to just check him in and credit the discount to him later. I explain that I cannot do that without permission from my GM, and I cannot guarantee that he will receive a discount, especially because he already paid a deposit on the room, because he would have to call the third party he booked with to get that money back. He then starts yelling at me because I keep telling you, dumbass, I didn't book with a third party. One of the housekeepers finally goes and gets the owner because he's just pulled into the parking lot, and he tells this guy the exact same thing that I did, and he listens to him. But he's still blustering about how he's never been treated so rudely before, and how he's never going to stay with us ever again. And any time he would walk by the desk afterwards, he would very loudly start complaining. And then he left to go get dinner, and said to me on his way out, I don't care that you have that section blocked off. I'm driving through it. If it damages my car, it's your fault. Who the fuck pissed in his cornflakes this morning? Then at about 6:30, I have an old woman come down demanding a full refund for her stay, because our pool has to stay closed for another night while we wait for the chemicals to balance. She said that I was ruining her trip with her grandchildren by keeping the pool closed, and their plans had already been ruined from the museums in the area being closed due to the government shutdown. I apologize to her, start to explain the situation, but she speaks over me saying my owner had already spoken to her about it, but he won't give her a refund. I apologize again and ask for her room number. I see that she booked under a non-refundable advanced purchase. I explain that to her and state that if she calls the customer service line, she might be able to present her case to them and see if they'll give them a refund. She yells at me and says that her husband was already on the phone with them and had been for hours already. Then she says, you know what, it's fine, we'll just cancel the credit card so you can't charge us. She then says that she's going to talk to my manager in the morning because she's been a rewards member for 20 years and I'm just so rude to her and useless, and my owner is rude and useless. And she's going to leave a long and nasty review about our hotel, bad enough to get us closed down. And she stormed off. She can cancel her damn card if she wants to. We got her money a week ago when she made the reservation. All that over the pool being closed, so people don't get chemical burns. Yes, I see now we're the assholes. 2. I recently had a guest who I discovered would get his resort fees waived every stay for making up a slight inconvenience that he just didn't have time to report every stay, which got to travel in my way back machine to the number of silly reasons people have asked for compensation. A weirdly common reason people ask for comps is because their door battery was dead at check-in, and the 5 minutes of figuring that out and then returning to the desk demanded a complete room comp. This happens all the time. But let us talk about resort fees in specific. For those unfamiliar, resort fees are an additional fee that is not disclosed as part of the rate. They are not usually illegal. Before you officially book the room, it is disclosed. I have seen some third parties hide it in the optional to click terms and conditions, but some also hide it as the very last sentence in a confirmation. Ever since resort fees became normalized in the 90s, articles have been written about how to get them waived. President Joe Biden mentioned them in a State of the Union address. I have my opinions on them, but I am paid to enforce them. My favorite of all time request to waive resort fees was the gentleman who was upset that people who didn't pay them still got to play in the casino. Coming in fast at second place, there was a man who said he didn't think we were a resort. When I asked what he thought a resort would have, he responded, I don't know, like a casino or something? To which I replied, Sir, casino is in our name. He hemmed and hawed a little before walking away sheepishly. Oh, but wait, who's coming around the bend? It's the out-of-breath guy who walked 5 blocks away to rationalize a resort fee waive, panting. He demanded that the resort fee be waived, as he was not using our parking structure. When I told him that was not going to fly, he asked what I would do to waive it. I responded, if you don't want to pay a resort fee, don't book at a resort. He yelled as much as his exhausted, atrophied lungs could muster.
So you don't want my business, huh?
We appreciate your business, and you paying what you agreed when you made the reservation. But now my old bones are tired, and it is time for me to stop. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and regale me with your most ridiculous discount or comp requests. 3. I, a 19-ish-year-old man at the time, worked for an 82-room hotel in the mid-2000s. This particular night I was working by myself on the 3 to 11. We had a conference center that fit maybe 300 people. We had a guy that used us several times a year, Carl, that put on different trainings for police officers. Carl was a high-ranking police officer and trainer. Carl was a very nice guy, probably in his early 40s. He would buy our staff dinner, bring treats and snacks, really an upstanding guy. He always left us glowing reviews. We always put him in a room close to the front desk, his request, and he told us if we ever needed anything to call him. Part of the deal with him, we blocked out a large number of rooms for the conference over a 3-day period, discounted rooms at the state rate. We would have 20-plus cop cars in the parking lot. It was nice having them there. We always felt very safe, and they were usually a good group. One of the major trainings they did several times a year was over a 3-day weekend. We had probably 30 agencies staying. Some of them booked rooms with the firm agreement that we billed the agency for the rooms. However, the guests needed to provide a credit card for incidentals. Some of the agencies covered everything, but not all. Most agencies sent their staff with agency credit cards to be used for incidentals. I had this lady come to check in around 5 p.m., and I asked her for a credit card for incidentals. She refused. She was a police officer from about 4 hours away in a medium-sized city. She was rude the entire time and told me she didn't need to give me that. I politely explained her agency would cover the room and tax, but they required the credit card for incidentals. She proceeded to argue with me, yell at me at the desk very loudly. Basically acted like an all-round Karen. It went on for close to 10 minutes of me explaining the policy of ours and her agency and her refusing. At one point I started shaking because of how loud she was being, and politely asking her to calm down. She said, "Wow, look how you're shaking. See, that's from how aggressively you are talking to me." She finally told me she would go to the hotel across the parking lot, which was sold out of staterooms and was at least $189 a night versus our $70 block rate, because I was extremely hostile and she wasn't comfortable with me. I never once raised my voice nor did anything to her. She went outside to talk to her husband, and he quickly stormed in with her behind him. He starts going off on me, telling me I was extremely rude to his wife, and that he could hear me raising my voice at her all the way outside. I was pretty puzzled, considering I never yelled or raised my voice, merely repeated our policy several times and gave her options. He continued to go off on me. Within a few seconds, Carl came down the stairs and politely introduced himself to this man and woman. He mentions he is the guy that puts on the trainings and set aside the room block. He then proceeds to ask which agency she is with, and she showed him her badge, and they are super friendly to each other. He then very quickly asks what the issue is, and she explains how I treated her very badly. He then pulls out his cell phone and tells her that if she wants, she can feel free to stay at the hotel across the street, but as it stood, her attending the training over the 3-day weekend would not be happening. She was absolutely shocked and asked why. He explained that he happened to be sitting at the top of our main lobby staircase, which was open at the top of the lobby, in a little seating area, catching up on some reading for the training. He liked to sit in the common areas and listen to the interactions, and honestly, I had no idea he was up there. He heard the entire interaction, everything she, her husband, and I said. He ridiculed her about professionalism and how he had no tolerance for someone who, 1, acted like she was, and being a police officer, and 2, lying about what happened. He explained the weekend conference probably wouldn't benefit her in the long run. He told her he would go ahead and contact her chief of police since Carl knew him, and see how he wanted to handle paying for the empty room he booked for this officer that was now not going to be used since she wouldn't be attending. Her and her husband left without saying a word, just pure shock on their faces. He went upstairs to his room on his cell phone, and I could no longer hear him. He did follow through in that, and her chief was not happy at all. The chief called the hotel within an hour and said we could go ahead and charge incidentals to the credit card we had for the rooms for the remaining attendees, and apologized for her behavior. He said he had told his officers they would need to give their own credit card before they left, and said he didn't realize this would be such an issue. Carl also apologized profusely for her behavior as well, and said he was sorry I had to stand there and take that. I explained it wasn't his fault, and he politely told me that I was very kind and professional, and he appreciated me and everything our hotel did for his program and the other police officers. He later bought me a nice dinner from a local Italian restaurant and sent our hotel a nice gift basket after the conference. He made sure to tell our GM how polite I was and how our customer service was top-notch, and that is what keeps bringing him back to our conference center. Never found out what became of her, but to think she was a police officer, yikes. 4. Our hotel is 48 active rooms, only 2 floors. We don't have an elevator. My manager says elevators are only required for hotels that are 3 or more stories tall. And since it's so expensive to install an elevator, we do with that. As annoying as it may be, and it is manageable in several ways. Prioritizing placing people we know are elderly downstairs, duh. Gauging arrivals' names to determine age, not always doable, but still helpful. Lots of workers stay here. They are very able-bodied, so they go upstairs as much as possible. Avoid young people staying for multiple days on the first floor, keeping the 2 handicapped rooms unoccupied unless stated they need it. Keeping to those, it is rare that we force an elderly person up the stairs. Until, of course, your colleagues quit adhering to those standards and just assign rooms by filling up the first floor, then the second when necessary. Like, hello? Does anyone else feel guilty to send 80-year-olds up some stairs? They didn't know we don't have an elevator, and they literally have to go up the stairs or not have a place to sleep tonight. Unless, of course, they go next door and grab a $30 room. I tried to tell my manager we need to remind the staff to be stingy assigning first-floor rooms, but he shrugged me off. So last night was my breaking point. I come in, and there's about 6 rooms occupied with manual labor workers on the first floor. For this company in particular, we always put them on the second floor. But now they're on the first floor for some reason. And of course, someone put another worker in our only room that is adjoining for 2 weeks. So when a person called to reserve the handicapped adjoining room, I had to deny it since he was unnecessarily taking it up for 2 weeks. Then the worst happens. A very sweet old couple comes to check in. This week was particularly heavy on older people due to a class reunion of 67, I think. I had been moving people all evening. If a young person assigned a first-floor room checked in, I would move them to second. I had successfully gotten several old couples on the first floor doing that, but we were officially out. Suites, handicapped singles, doubles, all gone. The sweet couple had canes, the woman had 2 canes, and the man had 1. They were both slightly hunched over and needed help with the registration card on the tablet. They moved slowly and carefully. I tried to help with their bags, but they said no thank you. I watched the lady slowly carry 1 cane under her arm, using the stairway railing on one side and her second cane as support for the other side. Her husband also slowly walked up the stairs, both of their luckily small bags in his one hand, and his other hand heavily relying on the railing. I'm an emotional person. I wanted to cry so badly, I felt so awful. They didn't have a choice, meanwhile there's tons of people taking up the rooms they need. The old couple literally had to stop halfway up for a quick break. Then I wondered, what if there's a fire? Imagining them struggling to find their canes, the stairs, then safely getting down them. Just seemed like too much for them. I brought this up again with my boss, tried to make him aware we weren't being careful with those rooms. But he shrugged me off quickly and gave me a half-assed response. I don't know how much longer I can stand working here. I've been in the front desk line of work for more than 2 years now, about 7 or 8 months at this hotel. My manager doesn't seem to care about the guests half as much as I do. This isn't the only issue, not even the start, but this particular event has been weighing on me more. 5. So to give you an idea of the situation I was in, we had 7 people booked into a female-only 6-bed dorm. We had no other rooms except for 1 mixed 6-bed dorm. This was only fuel to the fire as I was in the midst of kicking someone out and a separate group of people out of the hotel. I'm fully booked out, and I mean literally, not exaggerated, 0 rooms of everything. So, we have a check-in system where you can check in at any time, but we can only guarantee to check you in at 3 p.m. So I have morning shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., check a few guests in, but they forget to check a person into the system while giving them the key card. So the guest is all paid up and happily sitting in the room, and there are no issues. No issues on that day. Next day rolls around. Everyone who hasn't been checked into the system gets marked "Did not arrive" and their reservation removed from the bed. Next day, I come along and start my evening shift. From the same person as yesterday, doing the morning shift improperly, handling a situation with a wild woman. So I had to take over and deal with her, and the massive commotion she caused, frightening a couple, only for them to start requesting a refund. I told them I can upgrade you for free to a double ensuite room while I deal with the woman. While I was talking to management over WhatsApp on how to deal with this situation properly, and who to kick out, along comes a person claiming someone had stolen their bed. So I go up there with them and find 2 open unmade beds, and told them they can choose out of these 2 beds as they remain unclaimed. They were skeptics about it, since it had a small item on it that could have belonged to any of the other 3 people in the room. For context, for those who've never worked with dorm rooms before, The usual case is that some gunk just couldn't be bothered and chucked their stuff on the empty bed above or below them because it was easier to reach. Which, when there is an actual issue with 7 people to a 6-bed dorm, it causes a situation where I am blinded by repetition, and don't consider this a possibility. Lo and behold, I find everyone who is meant to be in the room has a bed. But then someone else comes along claiming someone has stolen their bed in the same room. I take a look, and I find that this person has been checked in, but no one marked it on the system. So, I do know it was the person from the morning shift, because I was on yesterday's evening shift checking people in, and I check them in before I take the payment, or they actually get their room key. The night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., has been working there for 30-plus years on the same shifts for all of them. He wouldn't make such a mistake. No, before the morning shift scrub can say it was someone else, we have an audit log that can see who has done what to the reservation, and it has your grubby paws all over it. This was while I was kicking someone out and getting crap from drunk people in our guest lounge who aren't meant to be drinking there in the first place. While that was going on, I was getting complaints everywhere that their bathroom doors had been locked. A lock that only cleaner keys have access to, and all of them have gone for the day. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, episode 128. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. You can also support the channel through my Patreon, which is linked in the description, where you can do that for as little as $1, or more if you like, a month. You'll also find a link in the description to my Teespring store, and that's a place where you can get yourself some Hellfreezer merchandise. Actually, I think everybody's probably got it by now that wants it, but it's there if you haven't. You can also make donations during streams and videos like this one. And while you don't have to, I greatly appreciate those of you who have already, and it's been helping me out. Okay, I think that's all right now, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is a crumpet a pancake with delusions of grandeur? And what other foodstuffs do you think are basically the same thing with a fancy name? Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now because it's getting cold and I need to warm up. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.